It was Mother's Day 2020 in Chaffee County, Colorado, a beautiful part of the country with mountains, trees, nature, and beautiful homes like the one owned by Barry and Suzanne Morphew. Suzanne's two teenage daughters were on a camping trip and had plans to spend time with their mom later in the day. Meanwhile, Suzanne's husband Barry was also away. He left early in the morning for a business trip just north of Denver in Broomfield. But those plans for that nighttime Mother's Day celebration for the Morphew family never happened. That's because Suzanne was reported missing by a neighbor after no one was able to contact her. The search for Suzanne was immediate but unsuccessful. Then, as the months went by, suspicion grew around Barry. He was arrested and charged with her murder, and more details were revealed. A mysterious tranquilizer dart cap was found in the laundry. Barry was seen dumping trash bags all over Broomfield, and Suzanne's affair with an old friend was revealed. But then, just before his murder trial, prosecutors dropped the charges against Barry. And now the skeletal remains of Suzanne were found about 50 minutes south of Morphew's home. Barry's attorneys are now insisting this is proof of his innocence. Tonight, we will look at the timeline and the evidence as we continue our investigation of the murder of Suzanne Morphew.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments as we take a look at a case that, if you look at it right now, seemingly remains unsolved. Prosecutors did charge the husband. Then they dropped the charges. There were some legal problems prosecutors ran into. But if nobody's charged, what exactly is going on here? So let's begin with this latest development. And in a case where you have a missing person and they find that missing person's remains, that's usually great. But it seems so far, because of the timing and the place and everything else, even though they've got more evidence, prosecutors may actually have more problems with their case now. Believe it or not, I think it's possible. And the defense has been very aggressive along these lines. First, you've got Barry Morphew saying, don't look at me. Why are you looking at me? You know where you found the remains. There's other people that are missing down there. That's what you should be trying to figure out. Who's responsible for all these missing people in this part of Colorado? Why are you looking at me? Investigate those other cases. Try to figure it out. You know, it wasn't me. I was in the other direction. She was found south of my house. I went northeast. You know where I was that day. You've got me on video with trash bags. Don't look at me. Then you've got the fact that is true, that when they found Suzanne Morphew, they were actually looking for someone else. So if investigators are in a certain place looking for someone else and they find Suzanne Morphew, well, could there be any connection between the other person they were looking for and who they actually found? You know, it's like, it's similar to what, not exactly the same, but it is similar to what happened in Gilgo Beach with the Long Island serial killer. They were looking for one woman and they found a whole bunch of other bodies. And they've tied those bodies together, and we know what's happening in that case. And I think that's what the defense is saying, and why they're saying, well, wait a minute, you guys were looking for someone else. You're not looking for Barry Morphew and some sort of domestic violence situation, jealous rage, whatever. We're looking at a serial killer here. That's what they want everyone to believe. And I think when we sit here tonight, we're still thinking, like, who did it? Like, who did it? Like, from my perspective, yes, there's evidence. It's a circumstantial case. Most circumstantial evidence can be great. Sometimes it's better than direct evidence. Direct evidence is like eyewitness testimony, which we know is so unreliable, right? You have three people that can witness a crime, and they will give you three different accounts about what happened. But circumstantial evidence, good circumstantial evidence like DNA and things like that, can help prove a case very well. And that's what they're working with here. But where I'm sitting, until I see and hear the evidence inside a courtroom and cross-examine, I'm still wondering who did it here. I'm still wondering who did it, and that's what I want to kind of take a look at here. So Matt Johnson, a Court TV crime and justice correspondent, takes a look at everything that has happened relative to the disappearance and murder of Suzanne Morphew.
Where is it? Where's the bike?
Oh, it's right there.
Where was it?
It was like just right down here in this little embankment.
8:46 p.m. Sunday, May 10th, 2020. 53-year-old Barry Morphew arrives at the scene where his wife, Suzanne Morphew's bike and helmet were found about a mile from their house by police. It was Mother's Day, but her daughters were away on a camping trip, and Barry told police that he had spent the day working on a job north of Denver in Broomfield, Colorado.
Just a confirmation, you left this morning at 5. And she told you she was going to go bike riding?
Bikes every day.
At around 5 p.m., a neighbor called 911 after checking Suzanne's house and telling Barry she couldn't contact her friend.
So the last time you probably actually saw her was this morning. That was it, right?
Yeah, I've been here, so I got a big job up there. I've been here all day.
Barry owned a landscaping business, and Suzanne was a stay-at-home mother who was being treated for cancer. The couple lived in Maysville, Colorado, about 2.5 hours southwest of Denver.
Is it a crash?
I mean, the bike looked, the way it was laid, it kind of looked like it, but there's not really that much damage to the bike. That's big.
Lion?
Yeah, it was just like lion.
No lion?
I didn't see anything that was...
Suzanne's disappearance quickly became a missing persons case. Her brother helped organize and lead searches for her with no success.
Unfortunately, every time the dogs hit on a scent, it seems to be close to or around one of his properties. What that might indicate is that scent was on his bobcat, and everywhere he used it, we're running into it.
Barry didn't participate in those searches, but he did post a plea for Suzanne's return on YouTube.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back.
On May 5th, 2021, almost a year after she vanished, Suzanne's husband Barry was arrested and charged with her murder.
The investigation is still ongoing. Suzanne, her body has not been found, and we're still looking into that.
According to the arrest affidavit, the Morphew's marriage was falling apart. She was having an affair and believed that he was cheating too. The week before she disappeared, she texted him that she was done with him, and they had to resolve their situation civilly. They also had a history of fights over money, and he was pressuring Suzanne to loan him thousands of dollars. But in the spring of 2022, days before his scheduled trial, prosecutors dropped Barry's charges without prejudice. The judge had thrown out the potential testimony of several key witnesses because of alleged discovery violations. And without Suzanne's body, prosecutors said they could not move forward with the trial.
Barry and his daughters are relieved, but they're sad because they too want to know where Suzanne Morphew is.
In May 2023, a year after the charges were dismissed, Barry Morphew filed a $15 million suit against the investigators into his wife's disappearance and the district attorney in the case. He and his daughters sat down with Good Morning America to discuss the possibility of future charges.
Well, I was innocent the first time they arrested me, so I'm sure it's possible. But I don't have anything to worry about. I've done nothing wrong.
More than 3 years after Suzanne Morphew went missing, investigators found her remains in a shallow grave. Police discovered her while investigating an unrelated missing persons case. The site, a desert field of sagebrush near Moffett, a town 45 miles south of Suzanne and Barry's home in Maysville, not part of the original search locations. Barry Morphew's attorney said that he and his daughters were shocked by the news of her discovery and point to the fact that there is no GPS or cell phone evidence that places Barry near Moffett the weekend Suzanne disappeared.
We've got a lot to talk about, a lot to cover tonight. Great guest joining us. Joining me from Denver, Colorado, reporter for the Denver Gazette. Knows everything about this case, Carol McKinley. In Jacksonville, Alabama, forensic death investigator, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, and host of the very popular Body Bags podcast, Joseph Scott Morgan. And in Pensacola, Florida, private investigator Lauren Vellucci. All right, welcome everyone. Can we start here? And what we heard in that last little piece from Matt was where the defense was saying there's no GPS, there's no cell phone evidence that puts Barry Morphew in the area where the remains were found. The only way he could have done it, Carol, am I right, based upon what the evidence is he would have had to have been there the day before, right? On the 9th, not on the 10th, because the 10th he's accounted for, right? That's when he heads out to Broomfield, which is in the other direction.
That's right. There was a time that he put his phone in airplane mode, and that was between 10 o'clock at night and 4 o'clock in the morning from the 9th until the 10th.
Wait, time out. Airplane mode, airplane, what?
Yeah, but he put his phone in airplane mode for about 6 hours the night before he went to Broomfield. And so there's been a lot of talk about that because during the preliminary hearing, the FBI agent in charge, whose name is Johnny Grusing, said 6 hours is a long time. You can do a lot in 6 hours. However, his truck was still in the driveway that night. So really, between the GPS and the cell phone records, you have to look at both. And the fact that the truck never left the driveway, the truck didn't leave. The cell phone might have. The next day, the truck wasn't down there and the cell phone wasn't down there. So there was a 6 hour period where no one knows where the cell phone was. However, the truck, even though the doors were opening at 3 a.m., opening and closing, stayed in the driveway. That doesn't mean Barry stayed in the driveway, but his truck was there.
His truck was there.
So, the more information you hear, the more confused you get.
Yes, but
in this case,
airplane mode.
Yes.
To me, Joseph Scott Morgan, and I'm just going by myself, the only time I put it on airplane mode is when I'm on an airplane. I don't know. I don't know why you would put it on airplane mode when you're on an airplane. 6 hours. That to me, that is really strange. It's like Jodi Arias years ago when she was driving from Northern California to Arizona to murder Travis Alexander. And it came out in trial, and the jury loved that evidence. The fact that the phone is on and then it's off and then it's turned back on, and in that window it was possible. What does your gut tell you about that little fact? What would you do to try to figure out if that's just an innocent thing that he did versus purposeful conduct?
But I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I went through the various sequences you have to go through in order to get to airplane mode. And yeah, it's kind of a pull down. I'm an Android guy, so forgive me. It's kind of a pull down, and you click on it, but it's something that you have to actively do. It's not necessarily something that it's going to passively happen. And in court, this can be powerful information in the hands of a digital investigator, where if you look back in time at his activity on the phone, and again, this is circumstantial, but you look through it and you say, well, how many times in the past has this individual placed that phone on airplane mode over this period of time? And then you begin to think about this period of time in which Suzanne Morphew has gone missing. And, you try to correlate that with the understanding that maybe perhaps he has never placed it on airplane mode, but at that particular time, the phone happens to go on there. And just like our colleague said just a second ago, just because a truck was in the driveway doesn't necessarily mean that anyone else was there. or that the phone was necessarily there, because you can't track it on airplane mode. So it's an interesting bit of information, and it's going to require a bit more pressure, I think, and shoe leather on the part of the police.
Absolutely. Okay. Let me ask you, Carol, about this. And to me, this is significant. What's the last proof of life that we have of Suzanne Morphew? Is it the selfie bikini shot that she took and then sent to her boyfriend?
The last time that we know she was alive is the picture she took at 2:07 and sent to her boyfriend on Saturday, May 9th. She was reported missing on Sunday, Mother's Day, the next day at 5 p.m. So you've got 2:07 until 5 o'clock the next day that we don't know what happened to her. So she really didn't look at her phone. There was a ping at 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. That was the last ping. There were a couple of like little ghost pings that no one can explain through the night. But after 2:07, she did not look at her cell phone, which is weird because her best friend sent her some video images at about 6 that night, and she never opened them. It turns out her best friend's daughter got married that day, and it's something that Suzanne was really looking forward to, the wedding of her best friend's daughter. She never looked at the phone to check out the messages on Snapchat sent by her best friend, which were sent at 6 o'clock, 4 hours after we last know she was alive, because we saw that picture of her alive, right, that she sent to her boyfriend.
Yeah, Lauren, I think that's a significant part here, too, trying to put together a timeline, right? I mean, you're first of all, Mother's Day is the next day. You're not checking your phone. You're going to go on a bike ride. You're not checking your phone or the weather or anything else. You're not doing anything. I don't understand why you would just stop using your cell phone at 2 o'clock on Saturday and then never use it again, even though you allegedly went to bed, were sleeping, woke up, and went for this bike ride.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense because it's probably, when she was murdered in that time frame. And that's the first thing that we have to figure out is a timeline on these cases. It's the biggest thing. It's where we start. And there's just so many odd facts in this case. Who has tranquilizer darts, hanging around in their house? It's just a very puzzling case. And there's a lot of pieces to it. And it's trouble.
I think we're having some trouble with Lauren's signal right now, so we'll check on that in a second. Joseph Scott Morgan, I look at this case, and it's not going to be easy. What are your thoughts with the location of where the remains are found, and it's years later? I don't think you'll be able to get much information from these remains. To me, it almost complicates the case here.
Yeah, it does. But there's a lot that we can learn from this location. First off, who in Suzanne's circle, and remember, they didn't have a huge circle there in Colorado, who would have knowledge of this specific location that would also have enough anger to take her out there. And remember, they've used the term shallow grave. Then a shallow grave implies that's an action phrase, because a grave, in order to be shallow, can only be dug to a certain depth. That implies to me a certain pace, rapid, and the soil out here is very, very compact. Did the individual that created the shallow grave not show up with the appropriate tools? In order to dig into this type of dirt out there, you would need to show up with certainly a pickaxe, perhaps, if you're going to go deep, and obviously a shovel. How defined were these margins that were out here? And one of the things that's troubling to me, I think, is that not only did they use the term shallow grave, but correct me if I'm wrong, feel free to. One of the initial reports that came out, I heard the term 75-yard radius relative to disbursement of remains. So that means that this is disturbed ground, that something has come into this environment and has dispersed the remains But what's important here, I think, is the fact that there was a very quick ID then. You're going to have, I think, at least a partial skull because they were able to do a dental identification on Suzanne's remains very quickly. And that's going to play into this. Of course, I would imagine that when this case first occurred, one of the first things that they went looking for when they realized that this was not going to turn out well is they had already subpoenaed those dental remains. They had them sitting. They were there in standby. Somebody was holding on to these things because you don't get a turnaround quite that quickly. Right now, I think that we're still waiting for more information to come in. But if you have, well, if you have animals that have come to this grave to disperse the remains are not going to be in a pristine shape, man. So soft tissue damage is not going to be that appreciable over a 3-year period, particularly if you have scavengers that are out there. The one hope I would have, I think, if you're trying to determine a cause of death, is going to be some type of impact trauma, perhaps to the skull, where either a skull fracture or perhaps some type of gunplay that has been involved. Other than that, I think that you're really going to be grasping at straws. I think the biggest question I've had asked of me, Ben, and it always happens with cases like this, is will they find the hyoid? When you have fragile remains like this, the hyoid bone high up in the neck is one of the first things that disappear. I always teach my students, the smaller the bone in the body, the less likelihood there is of recovery of it. We're talking about small bones of the hands, of the feet, certainly vertebral bodies in many cases, but particularly like the hyoid bone. It's the one unarticulated bone in the body. It disappears pretty quickly.
All right, Joseph Scott Morgan, Carol McKinley, Lauren Vellucci staying with us for the whole hour. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some of the DNA that was left behind, was discovered in this case. Who does it help? What does it tell us? Plus, coming up next hour.
In Palm Beach County, Florida, the trial everyone is talking about, the boy in the box. Timothy Ferreter accused of locking his adopted son in an 8x8 box in the garage. Tonight, we hear his adopted son testify about his own bad behavior and the punishment he received. As we ask the question, was a crime committed?
I don't have a bad image of Tim and Tracy. They just made a mistake. I believe that they weren't trying to do any harm. Yeah. I believe that people should recognize that that was a mistake and forgive them and move on.
Florida father accused of locking his son in a box in the garage with a bed, a bucket, and a camera.
He was locked in a room for hours at a time.
Police say this abuse went unnoticed for years.
There are ring videos that the state provided of the child lying.
He faces up to 40 years.
I'm not sure they're going to be able to justify it.
What's going on in this house?
The Boy in a Box trial. Live coverage weekday mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
It was weird because it feels like the top of the bike was like up this way.
So maybe flipped.
Maybe, I don't know, man.
But just probably this. Go ahead.
What's the thing about 4 o'clock in the morning? Was that somebody on the phone? 5 o'clock. Oh, yeah, so we pinged the phone and it said the last activity was at 4 in the morning.
Off here?
It's off of the Ponce Tower. So there's not any specific limit. Hey, can you not touch the bike with your hands, please?
Hey, guys.
That's wrong.
A couple interesting things in that body cam video that we just saw there. One, talking about the 4 o'clock ping on the phone of Suzanne Morphew. And then you've got Barry Morphew's at the scene and they're trying to tell him, hey, don't touch the bike. Put your hands on the bike. It's not a good idea. Okay. Let me put this up on the screen because this is extremely significant. I know this is significant. I'm a former prosecutor. I know how much damage this can do to a prosecutor's case if you are charging Barry Morphew in this case. All right, take a look. In the summer of 2020, CBI forensic analysis determined foreign unknown male DNA was found on various items of the crime scene: the interior cushion of the bike helmet, Mrs. Morphew's bike, the glove box, and back seat of Mrs. Morphew's Range Rover. Mr. Morphew, along with other investigative personnel working the scene, were excluded as the source of the sample. Communication logs with the Forensic Lab Division of CBI indicated that Agent Cahill had come to believe the DNA sample found in Mrs. Morphew's car belonged to suspects who may have perpetrated the crime. On May 19, 2021, Agent Cahill, among other law enforcement personnel, received a CODIS match letter indicating the unknown male DNA partially matched DNA found in 3 out-of-state unsolved sexual assault investigations in Tempe, in Phoenix, and Chicago. That's huge, right? That's huge. That is a problem. That, to me, you put that in a courtroom with a jury. This is what reasonable doubt looks like. All right, let's bring back in our guests, Carol McKinley, Joseph Scott Morgan, Lauren Vellucci. And Lauren's on phone with us right now. So Carol, can you just kind of clarify for us a little bit this DNA? Or is it clear that what's found on the helmet and the bike, is that the same DNA profile as what's found inside her car, or is the car different than the DNA profile on the helmet and on the bike?
That's a very important question, and it is different. The glove box DNA was the most important, and they sent it in, and they found a suspect. I guess you could call the person a suspect in Arizona, north of Phoenix, in a place called Prescott. You might have heard of it. My parents used to live there, so I really paid attention. But that person was eliminated from being in Colorado at the time, either through an alibi or I don't know what. Anyway, I was told that that person could not have committed the crime because he was not in Colorado on May 9th or May 10th. So the DNA really was a dead end, and I think they were going to be able to explain that in court.
And Joseph Scott Morgan, you've got DNA unknown on the helmet. You've got DNA on the bike. They tracked down this, I guess, previously unknown DNA that was on the glove box, and it's a sexual, I mean, how did it get in the glove box anyway? I mean, that part has to be explained too. Like, let me ask Carol one more time. Any answers to that question? If this person's in Arizona, no. How that person's DNA ends up on her glove box? No explanation.
There were people who said maybe it was someone who worked on the car, you know, maybe, I mean, there were people who put suppositions out there, but if that person had an alibi and there's a second witness that says, yes, this person was with me, that person could not have committed this crime. Interesting.
All right, Joseph Scott Morgan, what are your thoughts about the DNA in this case?
The fact that you've got a CODIS hit, and so folks understand, CODIS has 2 different categories. You have what has traditionally been, categorized as known suspects, those individuals that have either been positively identified from, say, for instance, a sexual assault at a scene, or that you have taken sample from with like a buccal mucosal swab for those individuals that are within the system that are required to give up a sample. Then you have this other group, which has traditionally been known as the forensic category, and those that are unidentified. The fact, Vint, that if what I'm hearing is correct, that you've got an individual with disassociated DNA that is associated with a sex crime is significant. I mean, you can't look past that. You have to understand that that this is the odds of this happening and not be associated with her disappearance, I think, are tough to kind of explain away. I would imagine the defense, if this were to go to trial, would make quite a bit of hay with that. as an investigator, I think, we go back to this idea of living kind of in isolation out in this area. Who knows her, who knows him, and who is in their circle? Barry Morphew worked with people. Hopefully they've run through that group of people to get DNA from them, because they might know, what his house looks like, how it's laid out, that he had a wife, that maybe, she liked to go out of the house every now and then. They may have known that he was going to be outside of the house. So all of that stuff has to be explored, and questions have to be asked and answered.
Lauren Vellucci, are you bothered by the unknown DNA on the helmet and on the bicycle?
That part, yes. That makes me wonder if he had some help with getting her off of that bicycle, if in fact she was taking a stroll at a very odd time to be doing so. So yeah, I'm a little bothered by that as well.
Carol McKinley, is it true that on the morning that he's going to Broomfield, that he first heads in one direction near where the helmet was found, then kind of turns around and heads to Broomfield?
That is true. He took a left instead of a right. So when he came out of his driveway and off of the dirt road to get onto this 2-lane highway, he normally would take a right to get to Broomfield. He took a left instead and drove up to maybe, I forgot how far, a couple miles maybe, to a mine and turned around. And then he went to Broomfield. And his explanation was that he thought he saw some elk, and he's a hunter, and he wanted to see where they were traveling. So it turns out that the helmet is found on that road where he went to the left. There's also a time where he went to a trash receptacle at a gas station early on. And some of the belief from investigators was that he put the helmet there first and then threw it later, and that he might have gone to the left to just find out if there was a place he could throw it from his car or throw it from the side of the road. None of us know this. This is speculation. But yes, it was a strange U-turn that he made early in the morning, 5 o'clock on a Sunday, on Mother's Day.
Yeah, that's Joseph Scott Morgan. That doesn't sit well with me either, right? And if you're trying to put this together as a prosecutor telling a story to a jury, the story is going to be the murder happens on the 9th. He has to somehow, some way get rid of the body, and then before he heads to his alibi, he's trying to get rid of the evidence. But there's no reason, if you're going to Broomfield, to drive 2 miles in that other direction. There's no reason, and that's where the helmet is found. So that makes it look like maybe she was abducted in one place and taken somewhere else from her bike. But at the end of the day, if he's there, he's put himself in a place where evidence is recovered that is inconsistent with waking up and heading to Broomfield first thing in the morning.
Yeah, it is. And if you've got some electronic breadcrumbs, I think that would be, and, in a hypothetical, that would be a difficult, hurdle to go over for any defense team, I think, and that would have to be explained away. But as we know, when you look at electronic evidence, perhaps, those types of things can be explained in a couple of different ways. And that happens in all forensic evidence, depending upon what kind of team you have. For me, the gravesite itself I'm hoping will be bountiful relative to what they're going to be able to find and determine. Another piece to this, I think, that I'm very interested in knowing, and of course we don't have all of the information, we might not for some time, is that we've talked about the body, and I talked about some of the elements, but I'm interested if there was any clothing left behind, anything whatsoever. And I'm thinking synthetic fibers as opposed to anything, say, a natural blend like a wool or maybe a cotton fiber or something that's going to be resilient out there in that harsh environment. And also, we don't know if the body had been cocooned, because even though you bury a body, it doesn't mean, and it's wrapped, it doesn't mean that critters can't get to it.
Electronic breadcrumbs. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that. That is a great, great way to describe it. All right, guests are staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the other missing women that are being, or missing people pointed out by the defense. Because we know what they'd be alluding to is, hey, there's someone out there. And maybe Suzanne was a victim of this person, this killer who's on the loose in Colorado. We'll be right back.
Was it a crash? I mean, the bike looked, the way it was laying, it kind of looked like it, but there's not really that much damage to the bike. That's the thing.
Lion?
Yeah, it was just like lion.
No lion?
I didn't see anything that would indicate.
A Florida father accused of locking his son in a box in the garage with a bed, a bucket, and a camera.
He was locked in a room for hours at a time.
Police say this abuse went unnoticed for years.
There are ring videos that the state provided of the child lying.
He faces up to 40 years.
I'm not sure they're going to be able to justify it.
What's going on in this house?
The Boy in a Box trial. Live coverage weekday mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
On Mother's Day, they called me and said she'd gone for a bicycle ride and didn't return. I flew out the next morning, and they had found her bicycle, but no Suzanne.
I don't think she went for a bike ride. I mean, without the cell phone, without checking the cell phone for all those hours, to me, that doesn't necessarily add up to me at all. Now, let's take a look at a statement from Barry Morphew's attorney. They've been very aggressive in this case in getting their story out there, or alternative stories as to what could have happened to Suzanne. Here's what they say. It was the Saguache County officials that fortunately stumbled onto Suzanne's remains last week while looking for another missing woman, Edna Quintana. What needs to be done, instead of pointing fingers at Barry Morphew, is asking the officials about the number of missing people and number of human remains that have been recovered in or from Saguache County in the recent past. Whatever happened to Crystal Reisinger, Edna Quintana, Suzanne, the man whose remains were found by Saguache County Sheriff's Office in the foothills on July 26, 2023, or the remains of the person found in another area of Saguache County last weekend? What were the circumstances of their disappearances? What is the cause and manner of death of the remains in that area? What happened to them? Are they looking for other remains in this area? So let me give you a little more information. Edna Quintana is a 55-year-old white female, last seen on May 3rd, 2023. In the area of Saguache County. There she is. That's who they were actually looking for when they found Suzanne. And now we've got a map. This is based on some reporting from KRDO. You've got Saguache County, Colorado. Police were searching the county for Edna Quintana, which led to the discovery of two different bodies. In Moffett, Colorado, Suzanne Morphew's remains were found along the side of Highway 17 south of Moffett. And then James Montoya, during another search for Edna Quintana in July, investigators found James Montoya's body in the foothills west of Saguache Peak off of County Road 46AA. And who is James Montoya? 26-year-old from Lakewood, Colorado, last seen 2:30 a.m. April 2nd at a bar in Lakewood. And his body was found in July. Crystal Reisinger disappeared in 2016. That's another case, a little bit older than all of these. Let's bring back in our guests, Carol McKinley, Joseph Scott Morgan, Lauren Vellucci joining us by phone right now. So, Carol, have those questions been asked? Have they been answered? What's the buzz out there in Colorado when it comes to these bodies, these recoveries, and missing people?
Well, here's the bizarre thing. Edna Quintana went missing last May 3rd, as you said, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation was looking for her remains when they found James Montoya's remains and Suzanne Morphew's remains. They've never found Edna's remains. All right, let's keep going here. James Montoya, I went to a press conference with his parents this week, which was held in Denver because he's a Denver man. He's from Lakewood, a suburb of Denver. He was killed probably up here during a fight. They're looking for a suspect. They've got the name. They've got an APB out for him. This guy who they think killed James Montana, put him in a car, drove him down to Saguache County, which is 3,000 square feet, by the way. And now they believe he's in Alamosa, Colorado. So police believe they have their suspect for James Montana. He's eliminated. Edna Quintana, her remains are still missing. Crystal Reisinger, her remains are still missing. She was a woman who from Denver went down to Crestone, Colorado, because she wanted to find herself. She was a spiritual person. Crestone has, I forgot how many religions down there, but it's the most per capita of anywhere in the country. It's a very, like a very spiritual, eclectic place. So sure, Crystal Reisinger, 2016, 5 years before Suzanne's body's found. No, would that be 7 years? Yeah. So she goes missing in 2016. Suzanne goes missing in 2020. So that's 4 years. Excuse my math. And then Suzanne's remains are found 3 years later. That's a long time. So I talked to an investigative source today, and I said, "What about Crystal Reisinger? We know James Montana is not connected to Suzanne Morphew. We're pretty sure Edna Quintana is not connected to Suzanne Morphew. She's not the profile. She's older. She was last seen walking in Saguache. It might have been a crime-related, druggie-related death. Reisinger is still a question. The investigator told me today, we do not know of any connection. We're not ruling it out, but we don't know. So that's what I know about those three. As far as the other missing person who the remains were found like last weekend or the weekend before, which Barry Morphew's attorney said they found, I have not heard anything about that. I don't know whose remains those are, where they were found, or if they were even found. But yes, I mean, that kind of thing where you've got alternate suspects, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean,
we can look at it here and say, they're not related. You get inside a courtroom, everything becomes a little bit smaller. Lauren Vellucci, anything strike you that makes you think that there's a killer out there in Colorado going after all these folks?
No, and that's the thing, Betty. Anytime you have such a vast, desolate area like that, the sad truth is there's going to be other bodies there. If you remember, like a year ago when Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie's case was big and they were at the Myakkahatchee State Park, they found at least 6 additional bodies that were missing in that location. So, that's just the sad truth. We have so many missing people in this country and they're being put someplace. And unfortunately, it is places like this. So I don't personally think that any of these cases are connected. Crystal's case, she had horrible things done to her 2 weeks prior to her going missing. And then she just magically disappears in a town of less than 150 people. And she pointed the fingers and was ready to tell who had actually hurt her. So no, I don't think they're related in any capacity.